Welcome back, class. We're going to launch our discussion into the fourth type of code that we'll talk about in this module. We're going to talk about revenue codes for a few minutes. And a revenue code is a standardized code that identifies the department or place where the procedure or service was performed, the type of service, accommodation, or supplies used, and it's generated the American Hospital Association in 1975 started generating these revenue codes. They're managed by the National Uniform Billing Committee, and you'll see it abbreviated NUBC. Remember, Uniform Billing, UB. Again, it started out UB 92, UB 04, and now people are waffling back and forth, between UB 04 and, CMS 1450. But AMA drives this. So you had CMS, HCPC codes, American Medical Association, CPT codes, and modifiers for the CPT codes. CMS does the modifiers for the HCPC codes. You've got ICD-10, ICD-11 codes that, while they are managed by the World Health Organization, the CDC has the opportunity to get in and change things as they go along. So that's kind of trying to lay the groundwork for everybody that's controlling these codes. And there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen when you're talking about these coding initiatives. And they assist insurance companies to specify the billing calculations and arrangements relative to the claim. So when we get into, this is module 4. When we get into module 6 and we're talking about filling out the UB04, you're going to see exactly how this all fits together. And whether you're looking at the medical claim that we're going to talk about, the physician's bill next module, or the one on the module 6 on the UB04, there are boxes on those claims, and a lot of them are referred to as FL, form locator, and then there'll be a number. So on a UB04 claim, you're going to see these revenue codes in form locator 42. And that's actually it's field locator 42. So field locator, FL, field locator 42. That's the box on that claim that you're going to see these revenue codes start to pop up. And FL 42 contains the relevant revenue codes for the department where the procedure service was performed and accommodations and or ancillary charges. And revenue codes for inpatient services. And when it says inpatient services, it can also show up on ambulatory surgery claim. It can show up on an outpatient, claim, outpatient side of the hospital claim. But it's still, we're talking about the UB04, and it's being driven by these facilities and institutions. And for inpatient services, the revenue codes identify, again, the department in which a service was given, the type of service provided, and the supplies used. And they're going to be four-digit codes. And if you look at, you can go out to the CMS website, and you can, type in revenue codes, and you can bring up a listing of revenue codes, or just type in revenue codes out on Google, and it'll bring up a listing. And again, they are 4-character. They start with the letter 0. And just like for a private room and boardroom in the hospital, so let's say you go at the hospital and you are in a private room, it's going to be 0111, private room and board. And a lot of a lot of these revenue codes are sitting there in the descriptors. And if you think about them, the format is a 0, a number, and an X. And the X can be filled in with another number from 1 to 9. And you will really see this maybe not so much in the room and board charges, but you'll start to see it when you go to pharmacy type services. So, and if it comes through on your claim and you receive some pharmacy type services, maybe they gave you some, maybe a surgical procedure, they gave you some morphine, or they gave you some Tylenol, or they gave you some type of medication, that revenue code is going to come in 025. 25 is the descriptor for the pharmacy, and it'll come through either as in the X. So if you're looking just at a revenue code, if you're looking at just the format of the revenue codes, for the pharmacy, it's going to be 025X. When you get your claim, it's going to be 025 1 through 9. So the X is replaced by digits 1 through 9. And if you look at that revenue code listing that you can grab out there on the internet, and I'm going to try, if I haven't already put it out there for everybody to use, I'll try to find a location for it. But that's going to give you the detail of that pharmaceutical service that was provided to you. If you're talking about medical surgical supplies, that is going to be a 027X. And remember, the X can be a number anywhere from 1 to 9. If you're talking about laboratory, it's going to be 030X. If you're talking about, diagnostic radiology, it's going to be 032X. The regular OR, the regular operating suites, are going to be 036X. If you're talking about ambulatory surgery, it's going to be 049X. So you can see there is a 0, and there's 2 digits. It's going to tell you exactly, was it radiology? Was it pharmacy? Was it the operating room? Was it ambulatory surgery? If you go in, let's say you fell at Walmart and hurt yourself, or you slipped on the ice. Not that we have much ice here in Atlanta, but let's say you slipped on a wet sidewalk, and you end up going to the emergency room because, again, you thought you broke your leg. You're going to have that revenue code is going to be 045X, or a number 1 through 9. So again, traumas 068X. Observation room, which is 076X. Observation room is one of those kind of squirrely things that you go in the emergency room, and if you've ever been to the emergency room and they take you back, and they've got beds set up in the corridors, and they may have some like little curtained off suites that they may roll you into. But while you're hanging out in the emergency room, waiting for them to decide what they're going to do with your leg, that's what's called observation. They don't think you're injured seriously enough to be admitted to the hospital, but they want to keep you hanging out there for a while just to make sure that they are correct in their diagnosis and correct in their treatment regime or treatment pattern. So they've got you hanging out there, and there's enough nurses and enough doctors hanging around that if things start to go south with you, they can try to take care of you without things going any farther south, let's say. So that's observation, and hospitals love it, because hospitals can typically be paid on an hourly rate for observation, or maybe there's a per diem rate for observation. But so they're making money while you're laying there in the emergency room on that gurney, or on that mobile bed that they can push you around on. They don't have to admit you because they may not have a room. I took a neighbor to the hospital emergency room probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I was sitting there with them, and there was, we'd been there for probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 hours by that point. And a woman came walking down the hall with her husband, and the individual I'd taken happened to have the little gurney sitting next to one of the restrooms, and I'm sitting there in a chair, playing on my cell phone, just watching to make sure nothing goes south. And this woman, helps her husband in the bathroom, and she's standing there talking to me, and she says, "How long y'all been here?" I said, "Well, we got here about 10:30, I guess." And by that time, it's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I said, I can't tell whether they're going to admit this individual or going to get things straightened out and send them home. I'm just a transportation dude." And she looked at me and she said, "We've been here since 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and there's no hospital beds. They need to admit my husband, but there's nowhere for him to go." She said, "We've just been hanging out here, and this is almost 24 hours later." She says they keep telling us there'll be a hospital bed open some point, but she said she said this is almost more than I can handle. And so when that individual gets that bill, or when the individual I took in get that bill, there's going to be somewhere on that, if you actually see the actual claim, somewhere on that claim, there's going to be that revenue code 076, and I don't know what the 1 through 9 code will be, but there will be on that claim, and there'll be a charge for that. And the revenue codes go in again. Field locator 42, so that's a little box it goes in, and the HCPC code or a CPT code, if one is required, goes into field locator 44. So you've got 42, I think 43 is the descriptor, and then 44, it's going to have a CPT or a HCPC code if it's required on that claim. And if it's required on the claim, the two revenue and the HCPC or CPT code have to be compatible. And the other thing that has to be compatible is on, and I think it's field locator 4, we'll talk about it on module 6, is type of bill. And it's a correct information must be provided on the type of bill. And it's basically actually a 4 different code, but the leading code on the type of bill is almost like the revenue code. The leading code on the revenue code is 0, and the leading code on the type of bill is a 0. And so the second digit in that, so 0, and the second digit is going to tell you the type of facility. The third digit is going to tell you the type of care, and the fourth digit is going to give you the sequence of a frequency code. And the person I took to the emergency room, and I'm probably not going to be able to see the bill because it'd be a HIPAA violation, but if I could see the bill, it's probably going to have a type of bill of 131. 1's a hospital, 3 is outpatient, and outpatient includes emergency room. So 3 is outpatient, and 1 is going to be its initial claim. So I would know, and if you're an analytical, if you get in and you're providing analytical work, type of bill could be extremely important. And so you just need to understand that that's what the information that they're talking about when it comes to type of bill. Billing and coding techniques can boost a provider's income. Not only can it produce a provider, can it boost a provider's income, it can significantly boost a payer's expenditures. Healthcare facilities, and again, we're talking about, hospitals, can bill, and they're going to use on that form somewhere, there could be the ICD-10 codes or the ICD-11 codes. I keep going back to ICD-10, but it could be ICD-11 codes. There could be some CM, which is the medical portion of it, and it could be the PCS, which is the procedural coding of it, especially if there was a surgical procedure provided. It might have a CPT code. And again, where's that CPT code going to be? Field locator 44 could have a HCPC code in field locator 44. And it's going to have a revenue code scattered in field locator 42. And we'll get into that again as we go in module 6, go through how to fill out, how to complete that UBO4. The category located or location where therapy or medication is carried out. So for both the payers, public health, for research, even on the provider side, these revenue codes improve specificity. And it will tell you things like the kind of procedure and the location and the resources employed. So those four pieces of information from those four code sets, ICD diagnosis or surgical procedure, CPT, HCPC, revenue codes, can provide a significant level of information, both when you're looking at research, when you're looking at public policy, but especially when you're talking about the reimbursement side of healthcare. And it's going to tell you the kind of procedure, the location, and the resources employed. Consolidates related charge types into a single line. And if you look on, if you have the opportunity to look at a UB04, if you're looking at pharmaceuticals, you're going to have a 0, a 2, 5, and it could be a 0 or could be an X, depending on how they're billing it. And it's just going to be a single line. And that is the summary line on the claim. But you know, or I will guarantee that if you looked at what they call the itemized bill, all of the page after page after page of services and supplies and activity that went on in that hospital, everything that is billed on this itemized bill that goes 0, 2, 5, and then X or a number 1 through 9, it is all consolidated or summarized into one line when it comes to the bill that the hospital submits to the payer. And if the payer wants to know the detail, the payer has to request what is called a copy of the itemized bill. And then lastly, on facility claims, how they're reimbursed, could be reimbursed by episode of care, bill charges, case rates, per diem, or DRGs. And we're going to stop here for just a second. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how reimbursement works with the DRG.